It is like orchestrating a ballet, starting the show with the GLB, because, of course, you don't want to start it with the back of the GLB. So welcome back, Artist Journal, January 3rd, 2025, broadcasting from the inner half of the nervous system, inner space, land of freedom here, free thinking. My name's Adrian Pocobelli, on a mission. Will it be daily? It was quite awesome. The first 80 days of this show was every day, shockingly, for me. And it was quite something. I gotta say, the temptation is there. Let's see how long the show is. I think it might even be shorter than the last show. It gets easier. The more you do the show, in a sense, there's less content that you need to put in. So it's kind of exciting. So here we are. Mika Oladev. I love this concept. I don't think Mika started the show, so kind of a fun kind of note in that sense, because I've been showing Mika's work for at least a year, probably a year and a half. Kind of, if I had to guess, kind of a glitch artist. Does a lot of pixelation, but I'd say glitch. I don't know. I need to get Mika on the spaces to actually find out more. I'll have to check into that. So, speculative synth. Absolutely love this title and concept for an artwork, and it recalls the data, speculative machines that they made, and I brought some up, actually, but let's just take a quick look at what Mika's doing here. So, edition of 10 on Tezos, 650, doing quite well, actually. It's been a little quieter on Object, but this is pretty good. Almost sold out. How many are left here? 3. So a wonderful concept here. Speculative synth, hard surface modeled in Blender, textured in Adobe Substance Painter, which I have never heard of, and I'm curious about, with glitched snakeskin print, screen animated with analog video, which is pretty cool. So kind of an art, image in an image. Created almost an illusion, kind of gives it the sense that this is realer when you are looking at the screen and using some analog gear. So pretty cool. You have sliders. Looks like a visual synth, right? Because the screen. I have to say, like these days, I've talked about it. Artists making their own tools. I guess you'd call it a secular trend. It's one of the most exciting trends, I would say, in the arts. Remember, if you watched, I think, a couple of shows ago, showing you Kevin Parker of Tame Impala now creating his own, in collaboration with others, creating their own instruments. This is meant to happen. And it's a wonderful thing. It is the possibility, I'd say, of AI, and maybe even if you're making hardware like they are, Tame Impala or Kevin Parker is, then maybe 3D printing. I don't know. Or maybe it's just cheap enough to manufacture it. You send it out these days. But things that were not possible decades ago are now becoming very possible. And so the world continues to change fast. So I like the timing of this one, too. And I find it semi-historical in terms, and I'll show you what I mean by that, in terms of this kind of concept of these, celebrating the machine as an aesthetic thing. Just appreciation. Let's put it this way. Appreciating the aesthetics of the machine is what I am trying to English here. So cool work, cool concept. I'm glad it did well. It deserves to. Very cool work from Mika Oladev, who I will reach out to on the space. I thought this was kind of an interesting analog here with Spiegel's Maschinen Klaviatura Calculatrix. Here we have if it loads up here, we have another, you could say, speculative machine. This time courtesy of Spiegel's Maschinen, as you see here, and interestingly, on a kind of a classical column. I'm trying to almost move it, but this isn't a GLB or a, digital sculpture, so to speak, virtual sculpture. This is, I think, a GIF or an MP4. Beautifully executed. The pixelation, it's like, one of the great decisions that Spiegel's makes on his work is the size of the canvas to get that kind of perfect pixelated size. Like, that's not an accident. That is all worked out ahead of time, thought through, or at least tested for. And Spiegel's, one assumes, Spiegel's another person I need to get on a space. I would love to get Spiegel's on a space. And, works it out to, okay, this is about right. This is about the kind of pixelation, the size of pixelation I want. So pretty cool and beautiful animation and a little bit of everything here. A little bit of humor, actually, in this work as well. So very cool. This one is on Ethereum, and it's on Manifold XYZ and Marble Terminal 320 by 240 by 2. So what that means is 320. So you see the size, right? This is a nice size for working, and then Spiegel's, multiplies it by 2. It's a GIF. It's not even an MP4. It's a big GIF. 24 colors, 360 frames. I wonder how big this is. Here's another. This is what happens when you notice the background. This is what happens when you hit the. Let me show you. It is kind of interesting because I think the black background's awesome. You know what I think's going on? I think it's a transparent background. I think, because when you hit view original image, then you get the white. So I suspect that this is a transparency, I think, is what's going on here in the background. You see the difference between the two, interestingly. And just going back to Mika, GM have been having some fun modeling imaginary devices. Just want to highlight and emphasize the brilliance of what Mika is doing. And combining with some analog video experiments. Speculative synth. So, nice execution. The idea is, I give it a 10 out of 10 from my humble perspective over here. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. I think of, again, the most exciting parts of data. Let me show you, actually. So here's actually, interestingly, so Max Ernst, we'll see what happens. I didn't click on any of these. So you see this kind of fascination with the elements of machinery and the visuality, the visual aesthetics, the visual nature of machines. Here's Picabia, Man Ray, Kurt Schwitters. But you know who came to mind? Maybe it came to your mind too, is Raoul Hausmann. And so I looked, again, and you almost think of like, what do they call it? A Neuralink, right? I mean, you start to see like, it's kind of, again, you almost see the sci-fi predating the real world innovation, by, 50 to 100 years, right? So here we have Mechanical Head by Raoul Hausmann, noted, I think, dataist, we would say. I think I actually have the Wikipedia up here. Here's another one, Machine Head, Raoul Hausmann, and Optophone. So here, Optophone. It's not the greatest image, but it's from a PDF here. And the Optophone, here's the Mechanical Head, I think, or Tatlin at Home by Raoul Hausmann. You see the machine. Celebration of the aesthetics of the machine. This is Raoul Hausmann's page, Berlin Data. He actually lived in Charlottenburg, for those that know their Berlin. I'm getting tempted to move out of Berlin later this year, but if I can find a place in Charlottenburg, if anybody knows, that's kind of more, that's the one neighborhood I haven't really lived in that I'd like to live in Berlin. So if anybody happens to know that. But anyways, let's get back to business. So what is the Optophone? Friends with Kurt Schwitters, whose work we also saw, for those that know Mersbo, sometimes these are called, you see MZ. I think these are Mers, Kurt Schwitters, right? These beautiful collages using randomness, which we were discussing last episode. So we're friends with Kurt Schwitters, and look at this. So as well as recital of sound poems, he also presented a manifesto describing a machine, quote, capable of converting audio and visual signals interchangeably, that he later called the Optophone, end quote. After many years of experimentation, the device was patented in London in 1935. He also took part in an exhibition of photo montages in Berlin in 1931. Interesting. And here is what is this? This is like someone, Raoul Hausmann revisited, making the optophone. So interesting. These are actually working devices. To me, it's almost secondary if they're functional. I suppose it's all the cooler if they're not. I actually prefer. I prefer exactly as Mika said there. I prefer imaginary devices. To me, that almost opens up a whole other province. And you know who else I think of? And I'm glad I remembered. Who wrote Impressions of Africa? Locus Solus, right? Some of you will know. What is the name of one of my favorite? Impressions of Africa, big influence on Dali and the Surrealist, difficult writer, Raymond Roussel. Raymond Roussel, of course, big influence on the Surrealists. That's another, right? Beck's in Impressions of Africa, I believe. Cantarell in Locus Solus. These guys making these imaginary machines. You see it a little bit. Potentially in Jarry, but maybe, yeah, I'd have to. I think of the Dr. Faustrel, famously, at least in my world, rowing across the streets of Paris, in a skiff, in a little boat, right? And everything, so just another kind of imaginary, almost impossible scenario. Right? Wonderfully impossible scenario. I almost prefer these imaginary machines to something functional. It almost defeats the purpose, Raoul, by making it functional. Anyways, here's just a couple more. The equivocal woman, or the teetering woman, is actually more how I know this work as being called 1923, early Ernst. Relatively early. I think he was probably around 33, if I had to guess. I think he was born in 1890, so not too early. Ernst wasn't super early at painting, interestingly. Here's another one, Per Ubu, Ubu Imperator. Ubu Imperator, 1923, Max Ernst. So again, kind of person-machine. So it's in the air. So I am all over this stuff. And it's kind of like the zeitgeist with AI and, again, all of these technologies colliding. It just becomes very, for me, it's very topical and just a very fun topic as we begin the show. So thank you, everybody, for the support. Artists, follow the liquidity on last episode there. Cableen, we heard from the curator for a couple more months over at Object, who many of us are familiar with, who have minted work on Object and paid attention to this scene. Ombeline, Cableen, thank you. Definitely not disappearing indeed. This space is all my life. Happy New Year to you too. So wonderful. And you just have to love this community. Great to hear from you, Ombeline. Omizu, yes, Happy New Year, Mr. Pocobelli, and friends of the Artist Journal community. So wonderful. Thank you for the comments. Also, Buddha, thank you for the nice comments here. And also Teganhoff, thank you for the greetings. Andre Oliveira Cibola. Thanks for talking about our collab. Yeah, awesome collab here in the next image there between Françoise Gamma and Andre. DJ Kiro, Happy New Year. Great to hear from you. Filippo Francocci, great to hear from you. Happy New Year. And Tom Bombattle. Actually, we have a work by you, Tom. This episode, Happy New Year. Lamataki, the man, the myth, the legend. Indeed, and we have more myth work here. In this episode at 3721, talking about the myth. Denise Sanchez, Happy New Year, dear Adrian. Love your reviews and great vibes. Thank you, Denise. Always great. Denise is becoming a longtime watcher of this show, so great to hear from you. Let's continue. I thought this was interesting. Jeff Koons on why he has drawn a red line on AI and art. I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to get your hopes up too high for this article. But because it's kind of not as meaty as you might kind of hope, considering it's like, oh, Jeff Koons, AI, he doesn't like it. What's he going to say? But let's see what he says. His hands-off approach to the production of his famous balloon dogs in stainless steel rabbits have been criticized in the past, but the world's most expensive artist has drawn a red line. I went for my own base work, be looking at AI to be developing my work. So then it goes into a whole bunch of this history of, let's just go to the quotes here. There are also certain projects for his Gazing Ball series, which we've looked at in the past, in which masterpieces were reproduced, but with the addition of a large blue glass bauble on a shelf, and also changing the scale, importantly, very importantly, and also reproducing in that series, as I pointed out in previous show, also reproducing, like when he did the Mona Lisa reproduced, he also reproduced the cracks, right? So a beautiful, brilliant simulation, and quite surreal by changing the scale. I actually think the blue, Jeff Koons felt like he needed the blue, bulb, is what I'd call it, or, the gazing ball. I actually thought the works stood on their own, but, so anyways, let's continue. There are certain projects I'm thinking about, he disclosed. I have a wonderful dialogue with people that are involved in the core of the development of AI. But AI appears likely to remain on the periphery of what he does. Quote, I enjoy where my core of my work comes from, my reflection on everything that has any meaning to me. I do not work with AI at this time directly other than to produce options. So he is using it. Here's this table. Could I see this table in a wood? And then could I see this shape in, a marble? I'd like to see this in a reflected steel, only in that scenario. I've been using AI as a tool, not as an agent. Interesting. So I think it gets to be honest, I think this gets it's kind of a hazy line, isn't it? So interesting. I guess let's be charitable to Jeff Koons. Probably what Jeff Koons is saying is, look, I'm the agent here. I'm the person who's deciding on things, and I'm using it to do certain tasks that I am ordering it to do. I am not getting it to produce imagery for me that I am not directly directing, right? I think that's what Jeff Koons is saying here. Quote, now people speak very much about AI at this moment, being an agent in that it has its own, thoughts, its own abilities to create. And I'm sure that at some point that I will be moving in that direction in some manner. But I'm very embedded at this moment in biology. He added, I met a Nobel Prize winner one time and we were talking about life. And he said that, life is just an animated chemical chain reaction. Interesting. And I thought that was so beautiful that all of a sudden I felt like I really understood what I'm experiencing. That's just an illusion. That's just the animation. But I believe very much in this process, this biological process and the senses, the sense of sight and touch and feeling. I don't want to be lazy in the back seat. Interesting. And I suspect he is also the inference there is that maybe in his opinion, AI would be being lazy in his view. Anything else here? Quote, I think that if AI is able to become that type of agent, we will be able to understand, work with it in some manner to benefit ourselves, or it will have us look at our senses, which are probably lying relatively dormant. We like to think that we're using our senses to their fullest ability, but we probably have become lazy to a certain degree, and we could only enhance that. Throughout history, we have always been confronted by technologies that have been enlightening and that have been very, very powerful. They change the moment we're living in, and they change our future, but I embrace this. Beautiful work here. And that's pretty much it. And then it talks about a couple of Picassos that he has in his collection. So, interesting. Jeff Koons on AI. What I kind of like about it is, I would actually say, once you read all the quotes, I think this is actually a bit of a misrepresentation of what he said. Drawing a red line. Did he say red line? I think I think Daniel Boffey is drawing a red line. I don't think Koons, he said I might use it, and actually it sounds like he does use it, right? And it's just a matter of I use it to change this, but I don't use it to create compositions. I use it to change the material of a thing, but I don't use it for my compositions. But it sounds like he totally uses AI. Let's continue. August Ground. In the new digital economy, there is an unspoken hope that the pieces we collect will appreciate in time as people eventually look back and assess the culture for value. Contrary to this hypothetical future is the sense that everything is moving faster and faster, and perhaps there won't be any backward glances as much as a perpetual present in which new work and immediate production of content will eclipse what has already been with us with what is now. What has already been with what is now. Let me there won't be any backward glances as much as a perpetual present in which new work and immediate production of content will eclipse what has already been with what is now. In other words, that the present will eclipse the past, a never-ending and closed feedback loop of the now. I thought this was quite a brilliant comment. Like, what a speculation here, like in a sense, and of course I follow August. Who knows, like who's to say, but kind of a visionary statement here by August Ground, this idea that we're like, will the present encompass everything and kind of, really dominate the conversation, so to speak, the cultural conversation. Kind of interesting as things get faster and faster, right? I thought this was kind of a funny comment. Artie Hans, subjectivity is the key word. Couldn't pay me to own many of the items on this list. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, so Punk6529 put out a thread, and I think I didn't look at it too closely, but it sounded like he kind of itemized, a lot of his favorite works, and it was kind of your classic, kind of the equivalent, the modern equivalent of what you, and I was going to say in the Taschen book, but not exactly, because they're, and again, I don't want to be too judgmental on the Taschen book, because there's great artists in there. We show Rinny Fish. Rinny Fish was in the Taschen book, so I'm not trying to diminish the Taschen book. But let's call it the mainstream Ethereum. Let's just call it what it is. As well, I guess there's some ordinals on here too. But it's almost like the crypto understanding of the crypto culture's understanding of what it considers its favorite art, interestingly. And so I think here you're starting to see a tension here. Because Artie Hans, who we've had on the Spaces, I think twice now, is saying, like, I'm not buying it in the sense. Like, I'm not buying that this stuff is all as great as it's being made out to be. What's Jedi Wolf saying? Inspired by Punk6529 thread on NFT scarcity and rarity. And, there's this like emphasis on the mechanics, right? In a sense, that's kind of the issue. Back to rodeo, I would argue. It's like, what is the problem from my perspective, or what makes me not overly excited about it from, in a sense, I don't know what happened, why it's so exciting. I guess it's the secondary, right? Like what changed? But I think the issue I have with it is it seems overly it feels like another crypto scheme at the end of the day, where it's like, okay, now it's 100x, 5x. I mean, this is crypto terminology. This isn't exactly like, if I start talking to artist friends here in Berlin who are just making paintings and sculptures and performance and whatever the case may be, going to shows, when talking 10x, 20x, 100x, like, that is crypto culture. Okay. They go, wow, maybe I can afford to buy, maybe I can afford rent next month, with that 10x that you're talking about, Adrian. So let's just see. Inspired by Punk6529 thread on NFT scarcity and rarity, I decided to map it out visually based on available metrics. Obviously, it's subjective and still a work in progress, but I think it's a cool starting point. What's missing? What should be changed? So again, so we see a lot of the, the ETH rock, the crypto punks, and whatnot. So I think this is interesting because I kind of agree. I think many people would, assume that I kind of like, yeah, I think a lot of things are basically overpriced, but whatever. There's nothing wrong with the crypto culture loving certain works and paying for them, but will it stand the test of time? I don't think so. And these are, depends on the work, obviously. So let's not overgeneralize here. And here's kind of another example. Now, on the other hand, I go, maybe rodeo's cool. Maybe rodeo's bringing in a new secondary. Like, I'm trying not to be like dogmatic here. And then you look at this thing. I mean, you go, JPEGs.fun. So kind of a play on, I guess, pump.fun, right? The meme coin creating platform, super crypto. All you need is a JPEG live on Solana in 48 hours. And so you add a JPEG, and it actually can make like 6,000 images really fast, I think. So you kind of see the thing, and then you change them all, and maybe it even does it for you. How cool would that be? I mean, maybe, like, this is the thing. Can we upload our own work, and then all of a sudden it'll give us filters that all of a sudden, like, I mean, that would be pretty rad. So I'm not against this. You put up one awesome artwork, and then launch an NFT collection instantly. Supply is fixed at 6,000. 90% NFTs are sold on a bonding curve. So you see how kind of, yeah. So it's kind of like the digital art is a means to an end of this, because the crypto, in a sense, it's kind of to a certain degree. I mean, there's DeFi, there's digital art. Like, it's kind of, I would say it's run out. It's got the memes, but it doesn't have a ton, interestingly, other than the very important use case of money transfer. Digital art, DeFi is legit. But you see almost this, like, the digital art here seems to be a means to an end. Now, as an artist, I still go, well, maybe that's still cool. Like, if I can upload an artwork here and get 6,000 different versions that I kind of like, maybe I'll do that, right? So who knows? But it's kind of this weird marriage here, because digital art continues to be a core use case of crypto. Like, one of the few, like, again, buying and selling of digital objects, right? In a sense, that's what money transfer is. It's like a digital version of money that you can buy, send back and forth. But you see, design NFTs with the meme mode, and here we go. So fair launch and all of these, like, crypto mechanics that we're all very used to, who are kind of neck deep in this. So all very interesting. I'm actually kind of curious to see what that does. Again, if there's a way to, upload an image and you get, 6,000 different versions, I'm kind of curious to see what that does. Let's continue. Strano, blurry pixels. So just more pen work here and pen plotting, and I assume it's a Strano work. And how beautiful that is. And look at how precise, but not too precise, right? So getting that nice contrast between randomness and geometric order. It looks fantastic. I would say it looks better than perhaps the digital, like the poetic effect of having this in front of you versus the digital image on the screen. I would imagine this one's going to have a little bit more power because of the contrast that exists between the physical and the digital. Thoughts of the morning. Let's make sure to silence this. Continuing on. Just the rip cache piece, but now on the wall. So just interesting to see it on the wall there, looking good. Not exactly sure, again, kind of looks like it's on a canvas. Not exactly sure. Looks like this was gessoed and then probably screen printed on top. Not positive. Here's eBoy. So this is also a nice print, as you see here, of a pixel artwork. Nice border. It's always like these superficial things that I really... Because imagine, you go to here, it's not going to look as precious as if you give it a nice border, then you can sign it underneath, do an edition number, whatever the case is. Looks great, doesn't it? Here's Ai Weiwei. Now, there were other... I'm looking for these other videos that I had saved of Ai Weiwei, I think, where there was like these screen prints that are being made. And so 81 questions, and you see here, Ai Weiwei is continuing with the pixelation. As you see. And I think, getting other people probably to fill this in, and then he signs it. He probably does the prototype, right? And then he gets them to be made, I assume. Where's this going to be? At the Museum of Contemporary Art. So you see how excited Ai Weiwei is about pixel art. Like, I mean, I think we just have to keep noting this. Renowned artist Ai Weiwei, to his credit, right? I mean, I don't see, Jeff Koons celebrating pixel art. Although, I have to say, to Jeff Koons' credit, I'll never forget that work I saw at a museum or gallery called Contemporary Fine Arts in Berlin back when it was on Museum Island, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I'll never forget the middle of the painting. There was like this flower, but it was the JPEG artifacts were oil painted. We're kind of back to traveling through the mediums. Another brilliant artist who is thinking along the lines of traveling through the mediums. So again, representing JPEG artifacts like a flower that had been JPEG'd out, stretched out too far, and then reproducing that in oil paint. Very powerful, very cool. Let's continue. Kyle Flemmer. Small screen, small space, small stars. So this was put out a couple of weeks ago. Pretty cool, right? Putting some of this on-chain work. In a sense, it's a shame that it's not square, but you probably have to do it, it's just, whatever you can get. But it still looks pretty rad, doesn't it? It's pretty cool. And maybe there's solutions to that. Like, I assume there's power. This is probably battery powered. Or maybe there's a wire somewhere in here. Really cool work by Kyle Flemmer. Into the work we go. How are we doing? 31 minutes. Degen Myth. So this is on Rodeo. Pretty cool work by the Myth. I maximized it here. I think this is probably a Procreate one. Just a cool work. Kind of reminds me of a work that was... I think there was a Degen Myth that came out on... What was the name of the platform? Warpcast? Somehow, I can't remember what the... platform, or maybe this is I don't think this is old. This is new. This is brand new. So you can still collect this. You can still mint this. 112 minted so far. So is that $20? Degen Myth, and let's continue. Here is Zesis Bliatkas Kite, I believe is what this is called, from the X. So 48. So you see, so $10 so far. You can still collect it. 8 hours left. So it'll be interesting to see, because not everybody was getting, 200 like we were seeing yesterday. So here is pretty cool. I'm really starting to dig this artist here, Zesis Bliatkas, who we've seen for a while, but again, sometimes it takes time. Here's another work by Zesis Bliatkas that's on Tezos, doormat number 13. I think hilarious. It kind of looks like a doormat, doesn't it? Kind of a hilarious idea, right? And even interesting here with the blinking cursor. So cool, kind of experimental work here. Really interesting. Using Microsoft Paint. Edition of 2, interesting edition number. There's Yuri J and Absurd Deity, two prominent people on the Tezos blockchain, 33 Tezos each. So picking one up each. Here's Gozo, and I don't know if this is minted anywhere. Interesting work, so a bit more animation. Kind of looks like a little bit of AI animation. Often digital collage, using some stable diffusion, one imagines, and maybe some sort of animation. So Gozo, another more cool work. Here is Lavon Yankee. Last GM of 2024. I thought this was a cool painting. Let's just look here. As you can see, just an awesome digital painter, and classic. Has made in the past. I mean, if you go to Lavon Yankee's, let me just get the name, Lavon Yankee's page right. If you go to Lavon Yankee's page on Object, you'll see a lot of classic works. I think Vincent Van Gogh collected quite a few of them too, actually. Of red wine and computers, and oftentimes the Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta and all that sort of thing. Very fun and cool works. Beautiful painting. I believe these are just straight up digital artworks here. Kind of a bit of a Renoir sort of feel to it. So beautifully done. And there you have pretty cool, right? There you have a 3D gallery, very contemporary. So cool work there. Here's RJ and Dr. Lee NFT putting in a bid already for 0.05, which is probably about, what is that? So ETH is, let's call it 3,500. So 0.1 would be 350. So $175 there for RJ. RJ's killing it. I mean, I think RJ is getting like a living wage here in the last 2 or 3 months. I mean, it's pretty impressive. He never told me that, but me just looking, he's doing well. Anyways, beautiful scene here. I mean, deservedly. Look at this. Digital Winter. Just beautiful. So this is by RJ, just knocking them out. AI and dithering GIF, 5 frames. And it goes to show you can release a lot of work and sell it all. So pretty cool. Here's another just RJ working hard. So here, just another interesting experiment. GM All, this is RJ, and you see kind of like more of a traditional pixel art work with another outline over top, and then just on top making the sky kind of flash. Interesting. Very interesting. Here is Sophie Ogore, I think is how you pronounce it, Day and Day, and just a cool New Year's kind of like 2 Polaroids here. So I don't think we've seen this one yet. Just an awesome, I love Sophie Ogore's work, kind of a bit of an acquired taste, but it took me a while with Sophie's work to figure it out, but at least from my perspective, but just beautiful. Like just little details like this along the side, this glitchery and everything, and even just the whole composition. Oftentimes these works can be, not this one, but oftentimes they're HTML and they can, you hit a letter and they do something different. Really interesting artist. Wasteman Goldminovich, hot dog with cheese, 99-cent Tezos hot dog with a little square piece of cheese on it. Interestingly, so kind of humor in this work. Nice work from a little bit of mustard falling over there. How much is this? Sold for 99 cents. Absurdity on the scene. Excellent. Mishi Asu. Maybe Absurdity should come on the show. That would be awesome. Gentle Laziness. Some challenging work here. Another kind of recent discovery. Mishiasu. Say in the last 6 months. Interesting. So this is an edition of 5. Hello New Year. 3 sold at 6 Tezos each. So bringing in $24. So, as I say, like, it's sort of like write off Tezos at your own risk, because in a sense, you are still getting more for your art, generally speaking, on Tezos, right? So, it's fun. Like, I'm kind of, I happily mint on Tezos, and my concern is I'm making pixel works to put on Bitcoin. Like, that's kind of still where I'm at here. So it's kind of nice to not overly have a bone in this fight. Well, I think as artists, I think it should be all of the above, as I've said in the past. Nov 1914, interesting piece here. Algunas Rutas, continuing to challenge us, right? Like, who knows what's going on here? This interesting kind of drop shadow pen. Is that a computer? Is that just a random drawing? Is that a machine? Interesting gradient, kind of circular gradient. Interesting. How much did it go for? 12 Tezos. So there was a time, you see how, with all of the attention on rodeo right now, I think it's actually easier to get good deals. Like, I was surprised to find that cap and on-chain work for 75 Tezos, and maybe it's because the attention was on rodeo. Revolution is for Kids. I thought this was an awesome work. Came very close to starting the show with this. Really, really cool work by Jake Studios. Digitally animated illustration, edition of 24, and selling for $4.25. And I just love it. Crown of Thorns, just stream of consciousness iconography, and a burning, JPEG sign here. Some, got some pyramids. You can tell it's just stream of consciousness drawing the upside down clouds. Kind of a nice kind of airbrush feel to this one too. Very cool work here. From Jake Studios. Here is Tornado Rodriguez, No Time, Big Rush. This is on Rodeo, 92 minted so far, and that is minted out. And that came out, I think, about 4 days ago. And so here's the work, and I believe we have a before and an after, which is always cool to see. And thank you for posting that in the Artist Journal community, Tornado. Ideas versus results. So love seeing the work in progress shots, and you see how rough it starts, and then it all kind of falls into place there. So cool work from Tornado Rodriguez. Sebasto Cesaro. So Seba Cestaro. Camouflage. Cool work here. Nice drawing. Kind of a combination of people and cubes. Beautiful drawing. Of course, Seba putting out, look at how great this is. Again, I like that looseness here. And it's very rare that you find the outline it's drawn on top of, right? Nice work. I mean, just a great illustrator, Seba Cestaro. I think has done work with the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken. Prominent publications, at least. Santiago Ruao. Cool work here. 33. So you see, I mean, then $6. And so you're kind of back to, would this have done better on Tezos? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe Santiago is happy, Ruao is happy to have 26 collectors and whatnot and everything. So it's not all about the money, right? Like if, in a sense, like I'm probably better off putting my pixel artwork on Tezos to sell it. But I kind of want to just put it on Bitcoin because now there seems to be a window of opportunity, right? So money's not everything to artists, right? This is beautiful. Really like this piece. And it's kind of, you can totally see it as a Santiago Ruao piece. So very nice. And so only 33 minted. And so what is that? Maybe $7. Nice work. Mumbleboy Maps. This is an edition of 3 for only 4 Tezos. And so some cool, I think this is an older, you can see the collage here. But combining it also with, strict digital elements as we see here. So I think this might be, it's very rough and you can't even tell what I was going for, but then there's something about it that makes it okay as is. Yeah, so very cool. I lay picking one up for 4 Tezos, edition of 3. Here's Time, also known as Santiago, Age of Unreason. This is a pretty cool work. Kind of nice big brush work. It kind of looks like zooming in of a work, but then you see these details over here. Nice piece. Cool work. Nice addition to the oeuvre from Santiago, aka Time. And look, making a lot of sales at $4 each. And edition of 15. How many left? 4 left. So nice work there. This was super interesting. So this is Element Lee, right? And cool experimental pixel artist. And what do you see? Shower of Gold, so which is what you see here. So this older, what looks like a 17th century painting, if I had to guess, a pixel version of it. I mean, really interesting experiment here. And the reason I say experiment is because not many more were done. Pretty interesting work. Taking a crop, making a little pixel art version, 220 by 200. Super interesting as ever from Element Lee. Here's another one. It's called Painting. And you kind of suspect it's also taken from a painting, but there's no other painting to look at, so who knows? Another interesting piece from Element Lee. Here's Caro Zorio, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting. These look like physicals, if I had to guess, but they might not be. So anyways, they should, you see how cool these would look as tickets, though. I'm not sure if they're physicals or not. But cool looking tickets. Here's another on-chain work by Cap'n under the guise of Fragments, After the Storm. And so beautiful, kind of minimal, look at that yellow on the gray there, diagonal sun, kind of a landscape. You see some kind of abstracted out trees, maybe a mountain range. Very beautiful work, these nice big horizontal lines, minimal, on-chain 75 Tezos, and that is still available. Here's also Cap'n on Rodeo, first in pixel art. So 208 mints. So let's just open this larger. So 208, again, let's do the math. Let's call it 20 cents. I mean, $40, $50, if I had to guess. 122 collectors. So it does get your work out there to the larger crypto sphere. I mean, it always comes back to, how many people are collecting purely for the speculative? Is the digital, this is kind of like the kind of always the question you look at jpeg.fun, I think is what they're calling it. Like, is the digital art simply a means to an end? And maybe there's nothing wrong with that if the digital artists can benefit from that, right? So it's just kind of an interesting situation because it does bring up like Absurdity, clearly someone who loves collecting art. So there's someone who's not just in it for the flip, so to speak. And even if everybody was in it for the flip, maybe that's not terrible, right? If the artist is making money, so be it, right? So Ex-Cowboy 01, interesting piece, kind of a different work from Cap'n. Gogolitis, Happy New Year. So look at how well this did. 240 retweets, 20,000 views, really nice work. I think this is part of a new series from Gogo. For those wondering, this is a piece that is part of an upcoming collection. So nice work from Gogolitis. The world loves the pixel art, doesn't it? Obelisk Recycler, this is Muji. So cool work here, kind of looking like a retro piece of technology with kind of some cosmic looking imagery in the background, almost like a violet on black, edition of 11, and doing well, selling 4 so far. Just minted. Here's Tom Battle, Holiday Glow, a New Year's Eve mint. And so there is our skeleton guy, kind of this 1940s, almost Sandman-like figure, nostalgic colors, reminiscent of 8-bit games, $250 each, and so selling a few on New Year's Eve. And here's Erwin, Roland. I don't think we've looked at work by Erwin before. I saw this on X. Interesting work, right? I mean, what do we see? We see the ASCII, visual ASCII, is basically what I call that. We see some running figures here. And then interestingly, this little operating system window with what looks like energy going through it. Interesting work. Edition of 11 and actually selling 8 of them at $5 each. That's pretty good. Continuing on, Pamelo Quadri. And this was put on Rodeo. So nice minimal work here by Pamelo. Instantly recognizable. The colors, the movement, the fun, the texture. Here's Feels, and these, look at that, 87 retweets here. Feels putting out some interesting animated abstracts as ever. Cool work there. Elna Frederick on Object. These are, look at how well this is doing. 10 Tezos each, I think sold out, edition of 10, minted on January 1st. And there you see what looks like traffic, so classic with the illusion of it moving, a traffic sign looking like a freeway exit. 65, maybe that's the Interstate 65 or something. Ex-Mortal, Beware the Friendly Stranger. Kind of a different structure here, interestingly. New kind of visual structure, kind of more juxtaposition here. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. From Ex-Mortal, edition of 13. And that looks sold out at 16 Tezos 66 for $22 each. So nice work. Ex-Mortal sells out here. That's pretty good. And so Scamra, GM, this is pretty interesting. You see some almost UI, it almost looks like a desktop, and then the image embedded within it, super hyper textured image. Pretty cool work by Scamra AI. This is Joao Salazar, I think on Super Rare. And so just cool work, kind of a bit of an outer space theme. Not sure if it's a newer one or not, but again, kind of Play-Doh, plasticine on canvas, if I'm not mistaken. And colored, cool artist. Here's my friend Ben, Cecine Paben, out of Berlin. I thought this is a great work. As you see here, one comment. Cecine Paben, follow Ben. Action, Synapses, Millennium, Madonna, Zona, which is Sun in German, Gospel, Priorities, Spotify, almost like a stream of consciousness. Brilliant painting here. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, is this a It's Not Gallery thing? And it's like, oh, it's Ben. Really nicely done. So that deserves a little more love here. So anyways, out of Berlin, Germany. Here's It's Not Gallery, watch list swag. Kind of an interesting piece. Not sure what to make of it. Kind of looks like a gun, a phone. Maybe this is an intruder. I don't know. Mysterious work. Here you have some feet. Let's see if we can make it a little bigger. Right. So, and then the person on the phone, More challenging work by It's Not Gallery. Challenging in a good way, of course. Kelowna Contemporary, this is Bar Studio. Expression of Stars, very nice painting here. That was such a great show they put on. And it looks like they're going to do another show. And it's been sold in the pre-sale. So Kelowna Contemporary continues to do quite well, just really showing images that people want to buy. It's a tough business, and staying alive and even thriving. Very impressive. Michele Kelowna. And here's Car by Walk. This was minted December 28th. Classic Walk piece here. Straight up digital artwork, actually. Should have put this in the digital section. And that went for 7 Tezos 42 Tezos cents. And that is your show, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I may come back tomorrow. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Till next time, take care.